The collar they'd fitted me with itched, and the magistrate's perfume was already wrong on my skin when the first Sentinel-Fox lifted its head across the glass concourse and looked straight at me instead of her. I wasn't supposed to be looked at. That was the whole job. Stand where Magistrate Hale would stand, wear what she would wear, let the cameras and the corridor censors and the visiting delegations log a body in that dress at that hour, while the real magistrate slept 4 floors below in a room with no windows. Director Sorrell had explained it to me once, flatly, the way you'd explain which fork to use. You are a placeholder, Marrow. A name on a manifest nobody reads twice. I'd nodded. The pay was good. I did not expect to be noticed by anything that mattered. Sorrell had been specific about what happened after the gala, too. Once the manifest closed at midnight, the contract closed with it. No severance, no thank you, no record that Issa Marrow had ever stood in that dress at all. Cleaner that way, he'd said, like he was talking about wiping a counter. I'd signed it without arguing. Disposable people don't argue about the terms of their disposal, they just try to get paid before the door locks. The Koresh Sentinel-Foxes mattered. 5 of them, brought out on ceremonial tethers nobody actually held, silver-furred, 6-limbed, each eye-ringed in a violet marking like a bruise that never faded. Bonded centuries back to verify a leader's scent against forgery, older than half the treaties being signed that week. The Concord delegations watched them the way you watch a loaded weapon being carried politely across a room. The handler walked them past the dignitary's line for the verification pass. Routine. 40 seconds, tops. I'd been told to stand still, breathe shallow, let the scent marker on my collar do the lying for me. The lead fox, Quill, the handler called her, in the bored voice of a woman who'd done this 1,000 times, stopped 2 meters short of me. Her head came up. Her ears went flat, then forward. Then she sat. That wasn't the protocol. The protocol was a fox brushing past a verified scent and moving on. Sitting was something else. Sitting, ears forward, tail still, was what the old treaties called marking. Move her along, Sorrell said behind me, low, to the handler. I heard the edge under the calm. The handler tried. Quill didn't move. The other 4 foxes, who'd been 3 meters down the line sniffing at a Vren trade attaché's boots, broke formation and came to sit beside her. All 5. Facing me. 140 delegates went quiet at once. I have never heard a room that size go that quiet that fast. She's wearing the magistrate's marker, Sorrell said to the room, too loud, too fast. A scent artifact. Nothing more. The animals are confused by the artificial signature. He said animals like a man trying to make something smaller than it was. I looked down at Quill. She looked back up at me with eyes the color of old glass, and I thought about the fact that I had not asked to be recognized by anything in my entire life, and here was a creature built to find liars looking at me like I was the only true thing in the room. Easy, I said to her, quiet, not for the room. I'm nobody special. Wrong woman. Quill leaned her head into my knee. The room did not stay quiet after that. A Salokan elder near the front made a sound I didn't have a word for, something between a gasp and a prayer. The Vren attaché stepped back 2 full paces, hand half raised like he wanted to ward something off and didn't dare. Sorrell's smile cracked at the corner. Reset the collar, he told the handler. Pull the artifact marker. We'll re-verify in 5 minutes once she's removed from the floor. That was the part where I should have just walked. I'd been hired to be removable. I started to step back, slow, the way you back away from a fire so it doesn't notice you've moved. Quill rose with me. So did the other 4. Not lunging, just rising, all 5, in the same breath, and turning their bodies so that I was standing inside a loose ring of them instead of beside it. The 4th one, the smallest, pressed its flank against my calf and stayed there like it had grown out of the floor. She is not a verified principal, Sorrell announced, and now he was talking to security, two men in Concord gray by the east doors who hadn't moved yet and clearly didn't want to start. Detain the woman. The animals will disengage once she's out of sensory range. One of the guards took a step. Quill's lip came up off her teeth, not a snarl yet, just the promise of one, the way a held breath promises the shout underneath it. The guard stopped where he was and did not take a second step. I watched him decide, in real time, that his pension was worth more than this particular order. One of the guards took a step. Quill's lip came up off her teeth, not a snarl yet, just the promise of one, the way a held breath promises the shout underneath it. The guard stopped where he was and did not take a second step. I watched him decide, in real time, that his pension was worth more than this particular order. The second guard tried a different angle, circling wide toward my unguarded side, the way you'd flank a cornered animal rather than challenge it head-on. The smallest fox, the one pressed to my calf, turned without lifting its body off the floor, just enough to put its eyes on him, and he stopped circling. He didn't retreat. He also didn't come any closer. Somewhere behind me, a Dravani delegate murmured something to her aide that I caught only the shape of 5, and not one of them blinking. Director. A new voice, older, dry, from the dignitary's line, the Salokin elder who'd made the sound earlier. Perhaps you misunderstand your own ceremony. The Koresh foxes were bred for one purpose only. They do not confuse artifact for substance. They have never, in the recorded history of this compact, marked a false principle. She looked at me, then at Sorrel, with the particular patience of someone watching a much younger species learn an old lesson badly. They have, however, on 3 occasions in 7 centuries, refused a true one. What do your records say happens then? Sorrel didn't answer. I don't think he knew. I didn't either, not then. It means, the elder said, when no one filled the silence, that the foxes have decided who in this room is real. I would suggest you stop arguing with them in front of 140 witnesses who will all remember exactly how you did it. Sorrel looked at the foxes. He looked at me, standing inside their ring in a borrowed dress with a fake scent burning a rash into my collarbone, and I watched him do the math on how this story would sound tomorrow if he kept pushing. Director orders security to drag woman away from animals that have never once been wrong, and I watched him lose the argument with his own ambition. Stand down, he told the guards, and his voice had gone thin. We'll review the verification protocol. Quill didn't sit back down until he'd left the floor. Then she did, and put her head against my hip, and the room exhaled all at once like it had been holding one breath collectively since the first time she'd looked at me. Quill didn't sit back down until he'd left the floor. Then she did, and put her head against my hip, and the room exhaled all at once like it had been holding one breath collectively since the first time she'd looked at me. Someone brought Magistrate Hale up from the room with no windows 20 minutes later, blinking under the lights, told only that there'd been an incident. She walked the same line the foxes had walked, in the same dress as Twin, wearing the same artificial marker burned into a collar like mine. Quill sniffed her once, politely, the way you'd greet a stranger at a door you weren't planning to open, and went back to leaning on me. Hale didn't seem offended. She seemed, if anything, relieved, one fewer thing in her week that required her to be the one everyone watched. It was the elder who said it, later, while a Concord recorder hovered nearby logging the moment for whatever this would become in the treaty archives, marked as kin, not mask. She said it like she was naming something that needed a name before it could be argued away again. By the next morning, half the delegation badges in that building carried the phrase stamped under their seal, and nobody who'd been on the floor that night ever called me a placeholder to my face again. I never did become the magistrate. I didn't want to. But the compact rewrote its verification statute that seasoned to recognize what 5 silver foxes had decided on their own, with no ceremony and no permission, that the body in the borrowed dress had been the true one standing in that room the whole time. Quill still leans into my knee whenever I walk the concourse. She has never once been wrong about anyone. I try, most days, to be worth that.